Hello, beautiful people of the internet. How are you doing today? My name is Jackie and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to discuss all of the books that I read in the month of December for the Cloak and Dagger Christmas readathon. Cloak and Dagger Christmas is a readathon that has taken place for the last couple years. So this is my first year participating, and it's dedicated to reading mystery books. This year for the readathon, I plan to read 6 books, and I did successfully read all of them. I will link in the card my Cloak and Dagger Christmas TBR video and also my reading vlog where I read all of these books. It's actually really funny. I did not do this on purpose, but the total number of pages that I read in December was 2,023 pages, which is so funny because at the time that we're filming this, we're going into 2023, and by the time you're watching it, it will already be the new year. So I just thought that was really funny that it just happened to be the exact same number as the year that we're going into. Maybe it's a sign. Like maybe 2023 is gonna be my best reading year ever. I don't know. We can hope, right? Now, my average star rating for the month was 3.25 out of 5, which is a little low. I think overall I was happy with what I read. I really enjoyed some of the books, and some of them I thought were okay. There was only one book that I actively disliked, and that's the one we're gonna get to first. So let's just talk about it. I really did not like Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. I gave this book 2 stars, and my God, this was such a disappointment because I went into this book expecting to love it. I have read multiple books by this author before, and I believe all of her other books I've read received either 4 stars or 4.5 stars. So for this one to be a 2-star was such a disappointment, and I feel kind of bad because I read her author's note at the end of the book, and she says this is her favorite out of all the books that she's written, and it's one that she was very passionate about. And I just thought it was bad. I'm sorry, Alice. I'm sorry. I really did not like this book. It made me feel some negative emotions. So the title character, Daisy Darker, comes from this very dysfunctional family, and she goes to her grandmother's house in Cornwall for her grandmother's, I believe, 80th birthday celebration, and the entire family is coming. Her grandmother lives on this tidal island, so at certain hours when high tide is up, it's impossible to leave the island. Over the course of the evening, a body turns up, and then other members of the family start dying one by one. First of all, I really disliked the way this book was written. It felt very overwrought to me, and it was filled with so many similes and metaphors. I never noticed this in Alice Feeney's other books, but in this one, this sounds really mean, I'm sorry, but I feel like she was trying to sound smart. Like she kept coming up with these similes and metaphors, trying to sound deep and have like a really amazing analogy, but it just came across to me as really forced and cheesy. I actually remember at one point she used the exact same analogy that she used in her book Rock, Paper, Scissors, which I also read this year, and it was basically a line where she says, "Words don't come with gift receipts, you can't take them back." And when I read that line in Rock, Paper, Scissors, I was like, huh, that's kind of clever. And evidently Alice thought it was clever too, because she used the exact same line in this book. I was like, sis, you already said this. Look, here's one of the updates I wrote on Goodreads while I was reading this book. I was only on page 99 at this point, but I wrote down several examples of her similes and metaphors. Our love is like an intrinsically woven net, made from a million memories and shared moments. I've spent a lot of my life in love's waiting room. I liked the taste of his name in my mouth and on my tongue, so much so I would whisper it to myself on the days he didn't come to visit. It felt like snacking between meals. That one I think is unintentionally funny. It's just such a weird thing to say. I wrote, Alice, sis, what's with all the similes and metaphors? I never noticed all the similes and metaphors in her other books, but this one, she just like hit us over the head with it. It was too much. It was too much. You were doing the absolute most, sis. I also felt like all of the characters were borderline caricatures. They felt extremely cliche and like they were easily defined by just a few traits. They, to me, did not feel like real people you would encounter in real life at all. I didn't care about any of them, and none of them felt authentic to me in any way. Then, I am not going to spoil any of the twists in this video. I believe, have a spoiler section in my Cloak and Dagger Christmas reading vlog if you've read this book and you want to hear me talk about it with spoilers. But I will say, several of the twists I saw coming a mile away, and I feel like all of the twists in this book were copied from other famous pieces of media. Two of the twists remind me of very famous twists from Agatha Christie novels, so it was very easy for me to see where she was going with this, having read those books. Actually, one of them I haven't read. I just saw a film and I remember what happened in the film, but you get the point. Then there was also another twist that reminded me of a twist from a very famous movie, which was great in that movie, but here felt a little dumb in my opinion. And then there was also a little minor twist that also reminded me of another movie. And so I just feel like all of the twists here were not original. And yeah, like there's no such thing as a 100% original idea in the world, because even something that you come up with, like there's gonna be another work of media out there that somebody else has done a similar thing. Let's just be honest. There are no 100% original ideas anymore with how many stories are out there. But like, it was so easy to see where it was going in most aspects. And I know a lot of people were surprised. I wasn't, and the one thing I was surprised by, I didn't really like. So this book was not it for me, y'all. I'm so sorry. I wanted to love this. I like her other books, but this one, in my opinion, was not good. I know everybody loved this, so if there's any other Daisy Darker antis out there, do let me know. I want to know that I'm not alone. Then I read Lord Edgware Dies by Agatha Christie. This is one of the books in the Poirot series. I gave this book 4 stars. All in all, I really enjoyed it. And I have to say, I never saw the reveal coming. The person who was the killer was never even on my radar. I did film a video where I tried to solve this book. I will link it in the card. Please go watch it. I had so much fun making it. As the title implies, in this book, Lord Edgware dies. At the time of his death, he is currently separated from his actress wife, and shortly before her husband turns up murdered, this woman mentions to Poirot, God, I wish my husband was just out of the way. If he died, my life would be so much easier, because she is now in a romantic relationship with a new man, but obviously she can't remarry if her current husband is still alive and won't agree to a divorce. So it seems like she should be the obvious culprit. She's the one who had the motive to want him dead. But at the time that Lord Edgware was seemingly killed, his wife was at a dinner party across town. So how could she have done it? And if she didn't do it, then who did? I really never saw the ending coming, so kudos to Agatha Christie. I think I fell for all of her red herrings in this book. I had a lot of theories. All of them were wrong, and I never saw the actual culprit coming. That person was not someone who I suspected at all. Like I said, definitely go watch that video where I try to solve this book. It was so much fun to make, and yes, I know it's a very long video, but I loved it. It's one of my favorite videos that I've made, so I would love it if you went and watched it. Now, I really liked this book. I think the reason I didn't end up giving it 5 stars is, one, I wish the book had a little bit more levity to it. There also were some parts of this book that I do not think aged well. In hindsight, I believe one of the characters was meant to be queer-coded, and I don't know if that was really appropriate. It's kind of like having a little bit of a period typical attitude about gay people. There's also a character who says very racist things, and I'm not smiling and laughing because it's funny. I just do that as a defense mechanism when I'm discussing things that are uncomfortable. And so he says very, very offensive things, and it made me really uncomfortable to read it. I will say I do not think Agatha Christie herself was condoning what this guy was saying. I think you were meant to see what he was saying as offensive, but it still made me very uncomfortable to see him making these comments about people of color, and I did not enjoy reading it with my own two eyeballs. It was not great. I think this was a very well-crafted mystery, and I definitely see why so many people list this among Agatha Christie's best books. I think I just wanted a little bit more fun in the book, you know? I think then it could have been a 5-star read for me. Next, for my buddy read, my mom and I read Death Comes to Bath by Catherine Lloyd. We both gave this book 3 stars. I think that's how we both would have rated it. And this is part of a series, the Curlin to St. Mary Mysteries. I will say I did not read the earlier books in the series, and I think maybe I would have gotten a little bit more out of it had I had, but I definitely was able to follow the plot and who the characters were, even though I didn't read the earlier books. This book is set, I believe, in the late Regency era. I don't remember what the specific year was, but the two main characters are Robert and Lucy Curland, a married couple who have ended up having to solve a few crimes together in the past. Robert's injury that he sustained a few years ago at the Battle of Waterloo has been acting up, so the two of them go to Bath for his health, and their new next-door neighbor in Bath is this man named Sir William Benson, who is staying there with his wife, his stepsons, and his sons from a previous marriage. One day, Sir William turns up murdered in the Roman baths, so Robert and Lucy decide they are going to investigate and figure out who killed him. I thought this book was fine. I do not plan to go back and read the other books in the series. I think my favorite character in the book would have to be Lucy. There were moments where she would say something that I thought was particularly witty or clever, and I love, like, a historical mystery that has a prominent romantic relationship and, like, you know, a clever, headstrong young girl as the female lead. Like, I'm totally into that dynamic, so that did work for me. Again, this is gonna sound like so mean, but I think the writing in this book was a little lacking, in my opinion. I noticed the author constantly uses dialogue tags, and this really bothered me. So basically what I mean by that is, like, every time a character speaks, she uses Lucy said, Robert asked. And the thing is, sometimes if it's clear to the reader who is speaking, you don't need a dialogue tag, because if you use too many dialogue tags in a row, it reminds the reader that they're not reading and they're not listening to an actual conversation. They're reading a written passage, and it doesn't have the same flow as an actual conversation. Like, okay, I'll give you an example. Let's say that a passage went like this. How are you today? Robert asked. I am quite well, Lucy said. How about you? I am quite well, Robert replied. My, it is a lovely day today. That it is, Lucy said, smiling. The sun is shining. Whatever. But wouldn't it be better if it just went, How are you today? Robert asked. Quite well, Lucy replied. And you? Quite well. It is a lovely day today. Yes, the sun is shining. That flows a little better, right? Because we establish who the two people are, they're having a conversation, and since it's just the two of them going back and forth, you don't need a dialogue tag every time because it's just a back and forth conversation. We know who is saying what line. You understand what I'm saying? But she used so many dialogue tags, it bugged me. I know, most people probably don't care about this, but I noticed it and I didn't like it. The other thing about this book that I didn't like is I feel like Robert and Lucy didn't have to do that much investigating because characters will just tell them things unprompted that I feel like a real person would not share unprompted. The Bensons are an extremely dysfunctional family with a lot of conflict, and members of the Benson family will basically air out all their dirty laundry to Robert and Lucy without Robert and Lucy having to ask, even though they just met these two people like last week. So because characters are just spilling their guts for really no good reason, I felt like Robert and Lucy didn't have to actually do any investigating. You know, usually when you read a mystery, the detective or sleuth has to figure out how they're gonna get information out of a suspect. They have to take a certain approach to get them to talk. And Robert and Lucy didn't have to do any of that because these characters just have absolutely no filter whatsoever. I just didn't think it was realistic. A positive thing I'll say about this book is that it was really fast and easy to read, so if you want something just really quick to knock out, these books might work for you. I just felt like they were okay, but I did have problems with how the book was written, and I don't plan to continue this series. I kind of feel like I'm being such a bitch critiquing people's writing today, but I'm just sharing my opinion and tips that I've heard and that I personally agree with. I mean, I'm not a published author, but I did study creative writing and I am working on a novel, so I think about writing a lot, and hopefully you all don't hate me now. I'm just sharing some tips and my personal opinions. You don't have to agree with me, and hey, like, I can say I didn't like their writing, but these people have been published and I haven't, so they're laughing all the way to the bank. Well, I'm here making my YouTube videos that I can't even monetize because I don't have enough subscribers. So, like, you know, I'm not on a high horse here by any means. Next, I read Dissolution by C.J. Sampson, the first Matthew Shardlake mystery. I gave this book 3 stars. All in all, I liked it fine. However, I didn't love it as much as I hoped I would, and I probably won't read the other books in the series. I did not think this book was bad by any means. I just don't know if I liked it enough to want to continue. This is the first in a historical mystery series set in Tudor-era England. This first book takes place around the dissolution of the monasteries. The main character, Matthew Shardlake, is a lawyer and an ally of Thomas Cromwell. When one of Thomas Cromwell's ministers was murdered on a trip to this monastery they are trying to dissolve, Cromwell asks Matthew Shardlake to investigate Robin Singleton's death. So Shardlake and his assistant head off to this monastery to figure out who killed him. I have wanted to read these books for a long time because I love murder mysteries and I love the Tudor era. It's one of my favorite times in history to read about. I liked this book fine, like I said. I do have some issues with it, and by issues I really mean just like personal preferences. Like, objectively speaking, I think this is a good book. There were just a couple things about it that didn't personally work with me and my personal tastes. I both liked and disliked Matthew Shardlake as a main character. One thing I didn't realize, I think, before I bought this book was that his character is written as a hunchback, and that is something that really helped me develop a lot of sympathy for him because in this time period, there was not the same understanding of disability that we have today, and somebody who does have a hunchback or other visible deformity would be ostracized and sometimes treated as if their disability meant that God didn't look upon them with favor. It was seen as a sign of some character flaw or deficit in them. I mean, think about Shakespeare's play Richard III, where the main character is depicted as a hunchback, and Shakespeare is really playing with this question of, is he evil because he's a hunchback, or is he evil because everybody treated him really shittily because of his deformity, and you all made him this way? So I really liked how the author included that in the book, because I think it really helped me sympathize with the character. And it's also, you know, sad but interesting to think about how people with disabilities were treated in the past. The things I didn't like about Matthew Shardlake, however, is, I'll phrase it as, I don't think he's a very fun guy. He's very serious, very dour. I don't know if he's the kind of guy you would want to have a beer with. I wish that he just had a little bit more personality or lightness to him. He is very, very serious, and I do think this book leans more towards hard-boiled than cozy in terms of mystery categorization. I did also guess who killed Robin Singleton. I have to say, I didn't really have a good reason why I thought it was this person, other than just my own gut feeling. And then once I latched onto this person as my #1 suspect, I noticed some very small details that I believe were foreshadowing the reveal. And honestly, I think had I not already suspected that person, I wouldn't have thought anything of them because they were such minor details. But because I already had my eye on them, it just set off alarm bells in my head. I do think they were examples of great clues. As somebody who wants to write mysteries, I appreciate what the author did here. Unfortunately, I just guessed. I just guessed correctly. I probably would have done the same thing as him if I was writing this book. I think it was a great reveal. I just saw it coming for no good reason other than that's what I thought. That was my gut feeling. There was something about the ending I didn't see coming though, and I actually really enjoyed that part because I think C.J. Sansom subverts expectations in a way that's very successful. And I don't mean subverts expectations in like the Game of Thrones finale subverted expectations because they just threw character development and stuff out the window in favor of shock value. I mean like he actually subverted expectations in a way that really worked, and so I really liked that. Then I read The Fleet Street Murders by Charles Finch, which is one of the Charles Lennox mysteries. I gave this book 3 stars as well. I don't have that much to say about this one, to be honest. I feel like I summed up my thoughts pretty well in that reading vlog, but I'll sort of just repeat what I said there very briefly. This is the 3rd book in the series following Victorian gentleman sleuth Charles Lennox. In this book, Lennox is currently running for Parliament, and so he's decided that he's going to put his career as a detective behind him to focus on politics. But when 2 notable Fleet Street journalists are murdered on the same night, Charles is a bit intrigued, and he can't help looking into the mystery a little bit. This was not a bad book. It was my least favorite in the series so far, and I think the reason I didn't like it that much is I felt like the plot could have been much more cohesive and smooth. I was not very interested in the Charles runs for Parliament subplot, and I was really hoping that would somehow tie into the murder mystery, but it did not. They were just 2 separate storylines that never converged. In my opinion, a really good mystery book should have everything kind of fit together in the end, and you should be able to look back and realize why the author included all of these details and plot lines. And considering how much page time the Parliament storyline took up, I just kind of wished it had connected back to the murder mystery storyline in some way. I think that's really my main complaint here, is I just wasn't interested in that plot line, and I really just wanted to get back to the murder mystery storyline. That was what I was interested in, and the Parliament part I just didn't care about as much. I will also say, I don't think you can read this book in the series if you haven't read the first 2 books already. Some mystery series, it's not that big a deal. You can just read this book, that book, whatever you want. You can randomly pick up the 5th book in the series and you'll understand what's going on perfectly. But this book spoils the previous 2 installments in the series, and it also, I think the reveal really hinges on you having read those books. That's all I'll say, because storylines from those first 2 books and characters from those first 2 books are integral to the mystery coming together. So I feel like if you just picked up this book and you didn't know this series, you didn't know what had happened already, you don't know who any of these people are, you might be like, wait, what? Who's this? What's going on? What are they talking about? I feel like you really gotta read the first 3 books in order in this series. Finally, I feel like I've been talking forever. The last book I read in December and in 2022 was The Widows of Malabar Hill by Sujata Massey, the first Perveen mystery novel. I really liked this book. I gave it 4 stars. I plan to continue the series. This series is set in 1920s Bombay, and the main character, Perveen, is Bombay's first female lawyer. The mystery plotline in this book involves the Fareed family. So Perveen works for her father's law firm, and they represented this conservative Muslim man named Omar Fareed. After his death, they are in charge of managing his estate, and Perveen gets suspicious. So the late Mr. Fareed had 3 wives, and his 3 wives lived in purdah, which is basically a practice that some Muslim women choose where they are not seen by men who are not their husband. So these women have lived away from the world of men. They've lived in this bungalow on Malabar Hill together with their children and their late husband while he was still alive. Now that Mr. Fareed is dead, the widows are all supposed to receive a certain sum of money as outlined in his estate. However, they've all opted to give the money all away to a charitable trust. But Perveen thinks this is very suspicious because if the widows are giving all their money away, what are they going to live on? Also, one of the women has signed her name as an X on the document, which implies that she's illiterate. So does she even know what she's giving up? Perveen uses her gender to her advantage, being able to go talk to these women who do not converse with men. And over the course of her digging into this family, a murder occurs. Now, I think some people might not like this book because the book contains a lot of flashbacks explaining Perveen's past and how she got to where she is in life. The murder mystery is not the main focal point of the book in my personal opinion. So if you're someone who just wants a mystery, you just want action, you just want to get to the whodunit, and you don't want to read these flashbacks, you're not gonna like this book. Personally though, I thought the flashbacks were really interesting, and it was very interesting to see where Perveen came from. I thought she was a very interesting main character and I liked reading about her. It was also really fascinating to learn more about 1920s Bombay and what was going on in this city at this time. This is not an era or a place I personally know a lot about, so I really enjoyed getting to learn more about it through this book. It was really fascinating to see Perveen's backstory and how it shaped her into the person that she is. This is definitely a slower paced mystery, and I will say one thing that I didn't like about it is I'm not convinced it was entirely fair play. I don't feel like there were a lot of clues hinting to the killer's identity, and so I think it would have been very difficult for the reader to guess who done it other than just, well, I personally think it's this person, 'cause reasons. But I did really love the main character and the setting. I thought it was very interesting and I enjoyed reading about a time and place in history I've personally never read about before. So I do plan to continue reading this series. So everyone, those are all the books that I read in December 2022. I had so much fun participating in Cloak and Dagger Christmas. Hopefully I will get to join in again next year. I love reading mysteries and this was just so much fun. If you participated in Cloak and Dagger Christmas, do let me know in the comment section what you read. Have you read any of the books that I read this month? If so, I would love to hear what you thought of them. If you're still watching and you don't know what to comment, how about you leave a knife emoji in the comments? 'Cause daggers, murder. Leave a knife emoji in the comments if you're still here. If you liked this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to see it more from me. I post new videos every Wednesday and a Sunday. My social media links are down below if you want to follow me on Tumblr, Instagram, or be my friend on Goodreads. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and a happy new year. Bye, and I'll see you next time.